Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today we have a global brand president on the show, John Sheehy. How are you, John?
Hey, Ben, I'm doing great.
So I have had the blessing of knowing John for quite a long time. We're not spring chickens here, but I think John and I first met when he was running the Kellogg business at Leo Burnett back in London, I think. And we've known each other, and now he is the global brand president for Starcom Worldwide. He's also a member of Publicis Media global leadership team, basically a major player in the media space. And so I'm excited to talk to John about what he's working on at Starcom, which is really one of the most storied media companies. And but before we get into that, let's go through your background a bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career today.
Ben, you mentioned the start of that career. I started at Leo Burnett back in 1990. My first day on the job was working on Kellogg's, and believe it or not, 30-something years later, I'm still on or in that business in a very significant way. So you cut me open. I started as a client guy, and I still see myself as that client guy 30 years later. And as part of that ride, I started on the creative side, started in Chicago, where our headquarters, had the good fortune of working in Mexico as part of Latin America. And then when we met in London, doing a European job. And, I did that for about 20 years and then jumped over to the media side of the business back in 2011. Mm-hmm. And that has been a tremendous ride since then, having worked at SMG as part of their global operations. And then as we formed Publicis Media, helping to form that, ultimately helping them drive the Starcom brand globally, and all the while been in the mix of what we see as the most exciting time to be in this business. And I find it, that journey to be ever changing, and that's why I continue to love what I do, and happy to share some of the thoughts.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to go through that. I mean, honestly, John, if I had to tell you everything I learned from you over the years, it just would be a long kind of like a long show just on that. But in terms of how to manage a client, how to work with a client, how to treat a client, how to see a client, you truly are, I think, the best in the business. And so I'm excited to see how that has been translated over to the work that you're doing at Starcom. Now, I mean, the media industry of what we knew even a decade ago to what it is today is dramatically different. And so what is Starcom today, and what are you guys working on?
Good question. I say I jumped into media, but it was anything but media, band. Let's just go through the numbers in the last 10 years. When I started 10 years ago, 20% of the dollars were going to digital. 80% were still going through traditional pipes. That digital was the emerging, what is now social search. Obviously, we've seen the advancement of what mobile brought to that. But let's just rewind only 5 years ago. That was still at about 40% digital. We saw the shifts, we saw the emergence, Facebook, Instagram, everything else that grew up behind that, Google, obviously. But let's fast forward to only 2 years ago. And that 20% of the business that was 10 years ago is now 20% is made up by data and what we're doing in the world of data. And then on the other side of that is commerce. So again, massive shifts in the way consumer technology is coming together. And the good fortune is that media has been in the middle of all that, whether it's investing those dollars, working the partnership angles, helping our clients put together that consumer experience across all the channels. And then in this world, being able to measure and in an agile way, adapt to that. So it's anything but media, but I do think for me, and certainly within the Publicis Group, how we're bringing those pieces together, media has played that strategic growth driver for much of our clients' business. So while I still see myself as a client guy, the great thing about being involved in the media side is you could bring together so many different ways to create and transform that brand consumer relationship.
How are clients seeing that relationship now? I mean, obviously, you have been really almost the guardian of that Kellogg relationship for your whole career, and certainly Kellogg is one of the companies that's evolved tremendously over the years. How do you see what they do themselves in house versus outside? How do they work with you guys? How has that evolved?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I think across all the categories, people are trying to adjust and stay at the same pace as fast as the consumer and technology is changing. In the world of CPG and certainly with Kellogg, we see some of those shifts, some fundamental shifts. And the first one is, getting a hold of your customer. And that's a data journey everyone's on. It's been pronounced given cookies are going away and the emergence of identity as being that valuable source of truth to put together growth audiences, but more importantly, to be able to activate and get the return that they're looking for. So the data part of that and the audience strategy behind that is certainly critical. The amount of insight that we're able to gain now from the depth and the fidelity of that data to the persistence of that really helps us bring together, certainly in the CPG world, all the different investments that are happening in order to drive that outcome. So whether it's a shopper dollar, a promotion dollar, a media dollar, a brand dollar, and even now a retail or commerce dollar, that convergence continues to happen. And I think the challenge there is how do you coordinate all those moving parts and partners in a very efficient way to get that and show that return on that investment. And so that's been a great opportunity for us to work with Kellogg to do that at the Publicis Group. And certainly as we see the roles emerging for people like myself, it's not just the media business or the creative business. It's really how do you start to advise and pull together the data side of that, the commerce side of that, and certainly the technology side of that, whether it's for global reporting or whether it's helping to build a direct-to-consumer site in a matter of months, which happened quite a bit if we look over the past 12 to 18 months with COVID.
Yes. So, I mean, bringing all of those elements together, and I think it kind of actually comes back nicely to a question about your title, global brand president. So, in a world where companies like yours are at the end of the day kind of playing a critical integration role in terms of identity and data and media integration, kind of the classic integrated marketing planning perspective, many of which actually of those ideas originated at Starcom over the years. How do you integrate with other brands, and how does a client see brands these days, the agency brands these days?
It's a good question, Ben. I think first and foremost, there's no one answer that fits any client. They're all different. I think at the heart of where we're focused is they all have the same challenge, which is engaging the consumer and unlocking growth. So for certain clients in certain markets, that's going to mean one thing, and to others, something different. And so it's really trying to, as always, just understand that client's business, understanding how, as a trusted partner, where you can make impact and how you can make it. And then in today's environment, title aside, we're all influencing. And I think, certainly at the Publicis Group, as we bring together, again, all these moving parts and partnerships, it is about being able to do that in a smart way, in an efficient way, with less friction and less silos. But it's really to be able to influence both internally and externally how to bring about the right change, the right pace of change, get the right talent that's needed, and continue just to stay focused on how do we best unlock that growth for the client. So if you're focused on those fundamentals, you at least have a chance. The rest is just, setting the direction, getting the alignment, motivating the people. And I've been very fortunate, as you know, Bant, to work with folks such as yourself back in the day. But, winning teams and building winning teams is the greatest satisfaction, I think, is
Yeah, no, you've always been superb at building amazing teams. And I think back, it's so funny. One of the projects that I know that I worked on for you was to help Kellogg's build some of their first brand websites. And, it's so funny back in the 90s that, packaged goods brands were just so keen to do something to engage with audiences online. And hadn't really thought about how it applied from a business perspective. It's almost like pre-e-commerce and all of those types of things. Yeah. I think the big discussions were always like, how do we build kids games and things like that, right?
Engagement models, right? No doubt about it.
Yeah, but that's really obviously evolved. And I mean, I think it really kind of leads perfectly into the next question. So, during the last year, as your clients have gone through the transition of operating as COVID or pandemic businesses, how have they shifted? How have you guys been able to manage that shift? And then obviously we'll look at kind of where things are going, but I'd just be curious kind of how that shift happened and what were the learnings there?
Ironically, you and I go back to the .com craze and bust, right? Back in the UK and Europe, we were a part of that tremendous ride, and then ultimately the fallout when that bubble crashed. So a lot of it was learning from the past, and the biggest thing is don't waste a crisis, right? And so what we did purposely, I think there were three phases. One was the adjustment phase. So many of our clients had to react and in the moment make critical decisions about what they were going to do. So we tried to fact-base that and really provide good counsel. But at the same time, we had to shift out of media. We had to pull campaigns. And then it became, how do you really start to see the shifts in the consumer behavior for each category? And how do you get out in front of that? And it became a game of agility. And what was really great, if you look back across many of our clients, many different markets, we started to create something called the 5 and 5 band, which things were moving so quickly. We wanted to bring 5 ideas, 5 initiatives in 5 minutes and with greater access to senior marketing people whose now time and attention, the agency was right there at the table, counseling and driving that. And so it was a great opportunity. And what we try to do is with data informing some of these changes, whether it's the fragrance category, the cereal category, the auto category, electronics category, if this is happening, what can we do? And then that brought us into the agile production models, the way that we're going to create content, distribute it, bring in partners. And that became a tremendous opportunity as we went through COVID. And lastly, I think the third phase was recognizing that things weren't going to go back to the way they were. And it became making sure that we put in place the structures, the talent that were going to help lead us into something more dynamic moving forward. So, and that's where we're focused on now. We're still, the expectations from a client have gone up. They're still getting.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading an article in Media Post yesterday, I think by Joe Mandisi, where he was highlighting the statistics for the uptick in spend. The predictions certainly for the U.S. this year are way, way up on the media side, and I mean, I assume that's good for Starcom, but I also imagine that it's quite an exciting time for clients as they really gear things up again.
Yeah. So one thing for sure, commerce, over acceleration of that area. So how do you make that part of that consumer experience and journey? As we mentioned before, the shift in data, with walled gardens, with retailers taking ownership of that. How do we provide a perspective for our clients that augments that or is separate from that, but gives the clients that ownership of their customers and the smart segmentation that's needed to do that? So if you look at it, that requires different talent, different capabilities, and that's why you're seeing a continued shift into the group models where the global client lead or the group client lead is really the catalyst for being able to go into the organization, extract what's needed on a permanent or a temporary basis, to really prioritize where those growth opportunities are for clients. And in that sense, I think the Publicis Group has done a fantastic job. I think Starcom, based on what we're hearing from our clients and the way that we've grown, we're taking advantage of that. But we're just getting started. And I think you're going to continue to see that. I think in the future, Bant, we're going to be wrestling with inflationary times again. So, how do you get your business ready to tackle that? Look what happened when we had inflation. Nobody can remember last time we had an inflationary period.
Yeah, I had that conversation over the dinner table the other night with my parents, and it was my mother's 79th birthday, and they were talking about the inflation back in the 70s. So it was it's not something that many people remember. I think everyone just assumes this is all going to just go forever. So hopefully it does, but I imagine the inflation is coming.
Yeah, and so it's a different environment than the last time, and so how brands are going to manage that, the value that's on the table, the way competitions come sideways. There's always a challenge around the corner. So that's why it's exciting to be in this business.
So one question I have for you, and it's something that I'm noticing a lot of companies are starting to make announcements about. Some of your competitors have made some announcements where it seems like they're almost being a little like draconian, kind of almost demanding their employees back to the office. And I'd just be curious how you guys are thinking about the whole operating structure going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, everyone's concerned about mental well-being and health and safety. So that certainly factors into how and timing. Fundamentally, I think we're a relationship business, both internally and externally. Ideas and connectivity matters to our sector. So from a Publicis, from a Starcom standpoint, we want to have people back together again, but at the right time and at the right pace, and it'll certainly depend on the market. But that's we've done very well in this virtual environment, but it's been difficult and it's worn out quite a few people. I have a lot of empathy for the people who have started their careers and never met their boss physically. So these are things that we're going to come back to, and the work environment's going to be forever changed. So we don't know. We can assume a lot of things, but it's going to be, I think that's where leadership and team and culture really takes over to really bring that energy back into the system. And we can't assume anything, because I think for the next 5 years, consumer behavior, our attitudes, and they're just going to be different. And we're going to need some consistency in how we bring about that change, and some really thoughtful approaches to that. So that's what we're lining up for.
Yeah. So I mean, on a personal level, this has been quite a challenging year. I hope all of the Sheehys are well. It's been obviously complicated for a lot of folks, but just be curious how, as a leader, you've been maintaining your sanity through the whole process.
Work and work out. The Sheehy family is doing very well. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. I think it's always the balance. I'm fortunate to work across our markets with some incredible leaders, and I've been fortunate to be part of yoga classes, training classes, teaching kids. We've done it all across all the markets. So it's fun to see, if you're fortunate enough to have a strong culture, how that culture just adapts to whatever environment is needed. But importantly, it's a time where connectivity matters. And so, what I'm doing, certainly with our market leads, our client leads, capabilities, is just trying to connect on a regular cadence, put things on the table, share ideas, share energy. And, that's been kind of the recipe for certainly Starcom, which operates globally and tries to do so in a very consistent, connected, and collaborative way. Redundancy many times is leadership, Bant, helping people understand what's going on outside their own market. It doesn't seem like it's rocket science to do that, but it really energizes people. And that's been a trick to maintaining our strength, I think, throughout this.
Yeah, no, and I think that you're obviously outlining some of the great things that I think obviously you guys are going to lead on and take charge. I think sometimes people forget or probably don't even know the full history of a company like Starcom, where it was really the first media independent here in the U.S. Of scale for sure, and reinvented that whole media relationship, that media model. Essentially reinvented media planning, as we know it, and now it sounds like it's reinventing it once again. But when you think about what the next couple of years looks like, what are the key things that you guys are focusing on?
Talent, talent one, talent two, talent three priorities. That's a big. That's everything. Focusing on our clients, focusing on integration. That's it. But we're seeing it right now. There's a talent shortage. So what are the ways that we're helping to identify, recruit, train, bring in, and onboard in a very quick way that talent? How are we making sure that their careers are being managed? As you know, the importance of building a diverse team with the right perspective in a holistic way. So that's where the focus is. We spend a lot of time thinking about how do we develop that talent. I think the other challenge, Bant, relevant to our conversation we're having now, is that talent not just plays in a brand, but also plays in a group or on a client. And that career management is so different today than it was only 3-4 years ago. So how do we as leaders who put on a Starcom hat one day have that agility to put on another hat tomorrow, or cross-train other people in different areas, or get trained by people in different areas? So we've done some really innovative things. The U.S. just completed, I think, 2 boot camps where we've brought in 100 people, 50 each, trained them up in specific skill sets, onboarded them, brought them into the business, and we're still looking for that kind of talent. So we're leveraging everything we can. We have more that's part of an extension of team that's coming out of India, out of Colombia. So who would have thought 5 years ago that would be how we're going to operate in this virtual world? But that's the reality, and it's certainly turning out to be a huge advantage.
Yeah, I mean, bringing that whole global team together and focusing and bringing the talent that you have in those markets to bear on global issues and global problems is great. It's actually a huge advantage of an organization that has the scale of a Starcom and the coordination of a Starcom. So that's great. Well, listen, John, thank you so much for coming on Uncaged today. We've been talking to John Sheehy. He is the global brand president for Starcom Worldwide. He's also a member of the Publicis Media global leadership team. I've known John, as I said up front, since his Leo Burnett days. But clearly, John has been on the forefront of almost every major media and marketing trend with his clients, working through the early days of online to e-commerce to now everything that we're facing as we head into this post-pandemic era. John, thank you so much for joining us on Uncaged today. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, where should they find you?
John.Sheehy, StarcomWW.com. So
Perfect.
Or LinkedIn, Bant. And Bant, thank you. I've enjoyed all the different programs, the energy, the cross-section of talent that you're bringing to this show. And I've known you, and you are always a pioneer in terms of what's next. So thanks for the inspiration, and hopefully we pay it back a little bit and pay it forward. So take care, bud.
Absolutely, John. Thanks so much for being on. Ciao.